So if you're a high growth company planning to scale in 2026, now is the time to think about the roadmap and how you get there. And SR&ED is such a great tool. It can allow you to unlock tons of funding to help grow your team. And the decisions you make today affect the capital so that you can unlock further growth for 2026 and onwards.
Okay, Lauren, tell us a little bit about GrowWise and who you are and what you do.
Yeah, thanks, Rebecca. So I'm Lauren Valliere. I'm the co-founder and managing partner of GrowWise. We're a SR&ED tax credit consulting firm helping entrepreneurs and their teams access SR&ED funding without the typical headaches. So we built an AI-driven platform that really focuses on saving the team's time and reducing that back and forth stress associated with SR&ED. All right, Rebecca, tell me a little bit more about Pivot Edge and about you.
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. My name is Rebecca Hawman. I am the Director of Marketing and Operations here at Pivot Edge, and we are a marketing-first approach to hiring. We help high-growth teams attract and hire and retain top talent that's not only right for the job, but right for your organization. Welcome back, Lauren. We're just going to jump right into it today. From a financial strategy perspective, how should high-growth companies think about their hiring plan as a driver to maximize that SR&ED claim?
So salaries are actually the most lucrative part about SR&ED. Within SR&ED, companies can claim expenses for salaries, materials, contractor costs, and capital expenditures, but by far salaries are the most lucrative. So it's really important that companies understand that before they're hiring. Contractors versus employees, it may seem like, contractors are it's simpler, it's a little less expensive, but in the long run, if that employee or that contractor is doing SR&ED eligible work, you'll receive significantly more back through SR&ED if you hire them as an employee. So it's really important to think about these financial aspects of SR&ED when you're hiring and when you go to, have a new employee on your team or as a contractor. And building that culture of SR&ED is really important. Not only for your business, if you focus on innovation and continuing to develop and solve, challenging problems, not only will that build moats around your business, which is always a good thing, but it'll also allow you to really further fund your business, which will just continue to allow you to innovate and build this stronger company. So we always say build that culture of SR&ED. And one other thing we've talked about, Rebecca, is hiring innovators. There's a specific person need to be working in a startup or in a scale up, or it's that mindset of innovating and not being satisfied with the status quo. And not everyone is that role, right? So hiring with that in mind is really important. I'm sure you can testify to that as well, but
yes. Yeah. I mean, I think you and I are both products of that. Our job is not 9 to 5. So it does take a special person for sure to be in a startup environment.
Gotta be a little crazy.
100% you have to be a little crazy. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense though, Lauren. Yeah. I think it's just so interesting how you talk about like this culture of SR&ED. It's clear that it does have to run all the way through the organization to be a successful part of that growth strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So for you, Rebecca, when you work with scaling companies, how do you help them kind of shift that mindset of like, we need this role, or like we need a developer, to we're investing in the company and the growth and like an innovative team? Like that's kind of a mindset shift. And I think a lot of startups come at it like very digital. So,
yeah, I think it's actually very similar to what you were saying back in episode 1. So if you haven't gone to watch it first. But it's about that mindset coming from the leadership team all the way through. Because as we just said, that startup mentality is unique, and you do need somebody that's going to join you for the right reasons, for that mission and that vision that you have for your organization. So we understand that when it comes time to hire, we know that you often needed that person a month ago or 2 months ago or even more. But, for whatever reason, didn't have the resources, the time, weren't seeing the candidates you needed. You're now in a really difficult position because you do need to fill the role. But it's critical when you're hiring because it's so expensive to not only hire that person in terms of just time and effort on your team, but that onboarding process, the ramp up, the learning curve that person's going to have when they join your organization, regardless of the seats they're filling, is expensive. And if you get in a position where that person doesn't work out, it's even more expensive. So when we sit down with an organization, it is really about putting that, roadmap in place of where is this person fitting within the organization? What are they solving? So is it a technical challenge? Maybe it's an operational challenge. but what are they actually going to impact, and how important is it that they fill not only the technical but also that cultural piece? Because anybody who's going to drive a business forward needs to believe in that founder. And so it is really about shifting, as you said, that mindset away from anybody can do the job to I need to find the right person. Because when we make really fast hiring decisions is often a really costly mistake. And when we look at it the perspective of can this person maximize things like a shred funding claim, if you're hiring too quickly, chances are you're going to hire the wrong person because you haven't mapped that role out effectively, right? And, we get it. Startups move fast. We're not here to slow you down. We're here to make it more efficient. But it is really about sitting down and understanding what that profile of the role is from all different perspectives, including, how are we actually going to pay this person? Maybe that is shred claims. But it's about, what can they solve? What are they bringing to the table as well? And I think, again, we'll look at it a little bit more in depth later on in the series, but there's a way to craft that job posting that attracts the person that's really actually driven to get your shred funding as high as possible versus somebody else in the seat.
Yeah, so true. It's so important to get the right person in the right spot, or else you're going to just face so many more challenges down the road.
Exactly. And, kind of along those lines, Lauren, I'm kind of curious if you have a perspective on what that ideal candidate profile should look like. I mean, we know from our perspective how to build a candidate profile, but we as a company have rarely looked at it from a shred funding perspective. And I think to your point, a lot of founders don't even think of it as a growth strategy. So this is that opportunity to do that. But what does that ideal candidate profile kind of look like?
Yeah, it's interesting because we as shred consultants don't often go upstream enough to get to this point, but it's such a good question because it does all really tie together quite well. And in general, I mean, the person that's going to be shred eligible is the person doing that really technical, really innovative work. So we're thinking developers, engineers, designers, scientists, that kind of technical person. But beyond that, it's not just the day-to-day person, debugging or doing kind of the basic project management work. It really is the innovators, someone doing that really challenging work that requires like testing, experimenting, kind of failing. Like one of the biggest indicators that there's shred funding there is that there's been failures. So we always say shred funds the struggle. Shred funds that time where like you don't know what you're doing and you just have to like struggle through it and
I love
fail.
that.
Yeah. So you have to be, kind of finding that candidate that's willing to fail, that's willing to, they're not just implementing an SOP, they're not just implementing, best practices. They're really doing the work that's iterative, that's kind of that challenge. And you have to find someone that's willing to do that work, and you have to find someone that actually enjoys the struggle and the iterative and the failing, right? Not everyone is, but it takes a special type, and that you can actually kind of go upstream and build that into the role and build that into who you're looking for and how you hire that person is building the kind of portfolio or building the candidate role around someone willing to fail and do that kind of.
And it's interesting because, our perspective on the ideal candidate profile is very similar in a lot of ways, right? Are you solving this technical challenge? And with technical people specifically, they want to know what the challenge is that they're actually coming in to work on. But I'm kind of curious because one thing we often talk to our clients about is, and you kind of mentioned this in the episode 1 was, what percentage of their time is going to be spent on this role. And sometimes we evaluate, does this role actually need to be full-time or can it be a contract person? And I know from what you said that kind of impacts the shred claim. So can you kind of explain a little bit more about contract versus full-time?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a big difference in the shred world from a part-time employee that's still an employee on your payroll that's paid a salary, a T4 salary, versus someone that's a third-party contractor. So we have to make a clear differentiation there because anyone that's actually on your team and paid as a T4 salary, that's considered an employee from the shred perspective, even if they are part-time. And the part-time aspect doesn't actually impact shred. So what will impact shred is obviously if they're spending less hours, then there's going to be less overall time eligible to get, back through shred. So if they're a full-time person spending 40 hours a week, potentially, half their time's on shred or whatever it ends up being. You can get 2/3 of that half of their time that's shred eligible back through shred. For a part-time person, if they're only working 20 hours a week and then half their time ends up being on shred project, then, it goes down to 10 hours a week that's eligible, 2/3 of that. So it does kind of eat away at what you'll get back through the shred refund. It still will be at that 2/3 rate.
Okay.
Whereas a contractor, as soon as you kind of flip over to that contractor side where it's a third party, you're paying them through invoices, it's not a salary, that then flips to the shred rate, which is around 40%. It does depend on province and a couple other details, but it's around 40% that you'll get back through shred for that contractor expense. So that's kind of the main differentiator there. But part-time employees are still considered at that 2/3 rate. So you know what, like if you're gonna hire someone either as an employee for half time, like 20 hours a week, or a contractor, you're still better off hiring them as an employee from the shred perspective. And I don't want to be ignorant to say that there's not a ton of factors here. As an employee, you need to consider, benefits and all these other factors. But it's just something to kind of shred should be in that equation. It's oftentimes it's not, but it really should be.
Yeah, I mean, that's even from our perspective, something that can help us as we meet with our clients too, is really evaluating those needs, but keeping that piece in mind. And something, again, you'll continue to see through the series, but Lauren and I, we are partnered up. And so we're happy to take a joint call if anybody has questions that both of us can address. So I guess just final thoughts is it's clear that when companies are evaluating their hiring needs, they need to really pause, take a step back, and look at not only what the candidate needs to bring to the table technically or skill set wise, but how they're actually going to be successful in the role, and then really evaluate it from a funding perspective of what this person's contributing and how much time they might be leveraging for shred eligible projects. And so I think that's a really key learning from this series, but this video specifically is take a step back, pause, and evaluate your needs, and then see how you can kind of maximize that role to be a shred funding catalyst and driver for your organization.
Yeah, and like trust us, Rebecca and I both live in the shred, the startup, crazy world, and we both get it. It moves quickly and, things happen really quickly, but you'll pay for it tenfold if you don't take the time now. Like if you hire the wrong person or if you don't spend the time putting them in a shred eligible role and you don't end up documenting properly, like you will either waste money or leave money on the table. It's going to cost you later on. So it's always worth it to just take a second. Everyone can afford 1 minute to think about something.
Yeah.
Just take a second to evaluate. Yeah. And then you'll be much more fruitful in the long run.
Wonderful. Well, this has been great. Again, stay tuned for more episodes coming soon.
Yeah, and if you have questions about if your new hire is going to be shred eligible or any questions around that, we've actually created a blog and a resource. It's kind of a workflow. Yes, no questions. Are they an employee? Are they a contractor? What kind of work do they do? Where are they located? It explains all about, how to understand if that employee is going to be eligible for shred. And so we'll link that as well in the notes here.
Awesome. Thanks, Lauren.